Being that we are all together in this space, we are back online and things are good. I want to welcome you. And thank you, Katie, for already jumping in and looking forward to this talk. I appreciate that. And I will be monitoring the talk, especially when Samara and Mackenzie get started. So please feel free to join into that chat. It's really helpful that we have people asking questions. That's really what we do want. We definitely want you to kind of be in the flow of this and in this wellness. And so we want to welcome you guys and get started. So to begin, we are coming again to you from Rush University Wellness. And today's topic is Eating Your Way to Wellness, Partnering Wellbeing and Nutrition. And my name is Judy Fredericks. I'm the Wellness Liaison from the Rush Wellness Center. And I'd like to have Samara and Mackenzie unmute and go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll get started.
Hi, I'm Samara.
And then I'm Mackenzie.
And we are dietetic interns and also candidates for the Masters in Science and Clinical Nutrition program here at Rush. We are both second years.
All right, thank you. And what I'm doing right now is putting in our Mentimeter code because we'll be doing that very, very shortly. So yes, actually, we do want you to use your phone during this. All right, so that's in the chat. All right. And so how we usually get started with this is we take a few moments. So if you haven't been with us before, we come to you every month during the school year. And you can see the scheduling up there. The date on this is incorrect. It should be December 7th and 14th. So we will be here again next week at 6 p.m. So to catch some people that are not able to come during the daytime. And then every month we have a different topic, same system at noon one week and 6 p.m. the next week. So we do want you to be able to join us for that. All right, so as we do each time, we want you to kind of settle in and just have this mindfulness moment where you've been rushing around and you've been doing a lot of things, and we want you to be able to just kind of center yourself. And so if you wouldn't mind sitting back in your chair, your hands on your lap, take a couple deep breaths. In through your nose, out through your mouth, and try to slow them down a little bit. And as you do that, I want you to just kind of settle in and see where you are. Maybe you want to look at the beach scene that I've got on the screen. Maybe there's something else in your mind that is calming for you. Whatever that is, try to have that space, kind of that image in your mind. I also want to teach you a calming hold. I'm noticing that my video, for some reason, is not functioning. So I'm going to talk you through it. And what I'd like you to do is put your right hand underneath your left arm. So you're pressing underneath your left arm against your ribs. And then take your left hand up over your right shoulder and press on those muscles that you would love to have somebody massage. This is actually a neural pathway hold, and it's a calming hold. So you could get into this position when you feel stressed, when you're being called on, when you are doing a report, whatever it is, you could have this and take those deep breaths and allow yourself to actually calm. Another hold is just very easy. It's just your hand over your chest, just over your heart, and that's another signal to your brain about calming. So that's a very nice calming thing. So take one of those positions. Close your eyes if you can, and allow me to read this to you. Think of a person who's been kind to you. Could be a grandparent, a parent, a teacher, even a beloved pet. Allow yourself to feel this kindness, this warmth. Imagine this person gazing at you with understanding and kindness and compassion. Imagine this person wishing you well, sending you a blessing, possibly saying these words. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy. May you be held in kindness and compassion. Take another deep breath and actually stretch. Put your arms out in front of you. Put your arms up over your head and put your arms behind your back so you open up your chest and take one more big breath. Thank you. Again, I want to welcome you. And talk about the objectives that we are going to discuss healthy eating patterns. And hopefully some of you have your water at least or your lunch in front of you, but also about nutritious and affordable snacks. And then to describe how proper nutrition contributes to your academic performance. And during this week, it's very important to have that happen, right? Okay, so now what I'd like you to do is take out your phone and go to menti.com. And you're going to put in the code that's on the screen or in the chat. So 3877-7992 at menti.com. And what we'd like you to do is put in a word, or what do you think of when you hear the word diet? Some people have positive feelings about it, some have negative. So if we all put that in, it's a word cloud, you'd be able to see that. If you're not able to access that, but you can get into the chat, go ahead and put your words into the chat, and that would be helpful as well. And as you're doing that, I'm going to stop sharing for a moment and pull up my Mentimeter so we can see what everybody's putting in. All right. Wow, look at this. Can you guys see the screen?
No.
No, you can't see that screen. All right. Diet, I am seeing disciplined, weight control, difficult, aspirational, struggle, will not work, temporary. The biggest fonts, meaning that the things that you, many people are voting on at the same time, are health, weight, restriction, confusion, weight loss, deprivation, and health. So definitely the whole gamut. And what I'll do is while Tamara and Mackenzie are talking, I will attempt to restore this so that we're able to also see what you did. I am thinking that I have lost my connection with you guys. I only have my verbal connection. So I am going to try to reconnect, but Oscar, if you can pull up that PowerPoint for me, that would be wonderful. Oscar, are you there?
Yes, I'm here and I have the PowerPoint.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and talk until I can get my my piece up. But what we want to do, this next slide, is about the terms to know. And there's really three things that we want you to talk about. We want to talk to you about today, and I'll ask Samara and Mackenzie to go ahead and jump in just a moment. But the idea is the word diet is only habitual nourishment, the food and drink that you regularly consume. And this is a choice. Meal planning is when you think ahead, you actually think about what's adequate nutrition and portions for yourself. So it actually is something you're thinking about. And mindful eating is when you're able to do it slowly, trying not to do 5 other things at the same time. You're being aware of your hunger cues. You're paying attention to your body and what it's giving your brain as messages, and you're able to do it mindfully. And you will feel satiated sooner and stay full longer if you're able to do that. So I'm going to ask Samara and Mackenzie to go ahead and get started with this slide, and then we'll move ahead to the next one as you request.
Definitely. Thank you, Judy. Yeah, so we just wanted to provide you all with the actual definition for diet, because it does have a lot of associations in our society, especially there was a lot of like negative words and restrictive words and things like that. But we just want to emphasize that the way that we'll be talking about diet today is really just the actual meaning, which is your habitual intake. So just the food that you eat. And then we will be touching on meal planning a little bit today, with some recipes and some snack ideas, just because that can be one of the most difficult barriers for proper nutrition. And then we will also touch on mindful eating as well. And then we can go to the next slide if you have a chance. Thank you. Okay, so first we wanted to talk you through a couple, we'll go through 3 of the healthy diet patterns. And these are just some ideas for things to look for when you're looking at your plate. So the first example here is the My Plate, which is produced by the USDA and based off of the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. This can be just like a simplistic visual to display what healthy eating looks like. And again, it is designed for healthy Americans. And so just so you can have some context, this is based off of a 9-inch plate, which is the standard size of just a regular paper plate. So first to walk you through the components of My Plate. So of course we have our fruits and vegetables, which are kind of self-explanatory. But also the dietary guidelines emphasize that canned and frozen fruits and vegetables are okay too, as long as the fruits are in their own juice. And then for vegetables, we just like to look for lower sodium and vegetables that are not in a sauce, because that can add extra sodium and sugar that we don't need. So just so you know, everything does not have to be fresh. And then moving on to the protein portion, so the purple part, that can include things like meat, poultry, fish, eggs, and tofu, just for a couple examples. And then as far as the grains, that would be things like rice, breads, pasta. And although it doesn't say it here because this is a simple diagram, the USDA does recommend to have half of your grains be whole grains. And then just moving on to the dairy, the blue part, that would include, of course, like milk, cheese, and yogurt. So this is a really great method for people because it kind of takes away the need for measuring and weighing in terms of figuring out what your intake is. Because if your plate is set up this way with these portions, then you are getting everything you need with a good variety. And also, just so you know, these components do not necessarily need to be separated into these 5 different categories, as long as those 5 categories are present on your plate. So for example, you could have these as a sandwich. So you may include, like, the protein would be maybe turkey or ham. The grain would be the bread, of course. And then you may include vegetables like lettuce or onion, and cheese may be the dairy. And then on the side, you may have like an apple or orange for the fruit. So if you can move to the next slide. Okay, so here's another example of a healthy eating pattern. This was kind of based off of My Plate, but it's actually produced by Harvard. And it is similar, but it's a little bit more specific in terms of its guidelines. So I'll just point out the major differences between this pattern and the one that we previously talked about. So first thing, if you look at the healthy protein, they just emphasize healthy protein over just protein in general, which of course is emphasized in the dietary guidelines, but this visual is a little more specific. So looking at things like fish, poultry, beans, and nuts, and then kind of limiting the red meat, the processed meats, and cheeses. Similarly, this points out whole grains specifically. Rather than the previous one, which talked about half of the grains being whole grains. And then for the beverage for this one, they really focus on water being the main beverage, or like sugar-free beverages with little to no sugar, some dairy, and then limiting juice and like sugary drinks. And then they also mention the healthy oils up to the left with the yellow. And this would be like olive oil or canola oil used in cooking, or even like on salads or added at the table. So limiting the saturated and trans fats. And then again, this pattern, although it shows all the components separate, this can also be put together in kind of a mixed meal as well. If we
Let
can
me jump in for a moment. You have 2 questions that came up in the chat. One was back on the My Plate slide, asking how do foods like Beyond Meat fit into the plate. So I'm thinking that's like the Impossible Burger kind of thing. And then the other question was, do dietitians still use the food pyramid, or should diets be tailored to individuals and their body habits? So maybe the first one about what about the Impossible Burger, Beyond Burger kinds of things?
So the Beyond Meat and Impossible Burger and things like that are kind of used as like meat replacements. So typically those foods will still be higher in protein, usually through like pea protein and other things like that. So that would still count towards the protein category.
One thing to watch with that definitely is the sodium content. So that's where label reading definitely comes into play. So if you look at the nutrition facts label that is on that package, you'll see that it has grams of sodium on there, or milligrams, I guess I should say, and then the percent daily value. So any food that has over a 10% daily value is going to be technically considered high sodium. Not that you can never have those things, but those are definitely just things that you want to try to limit.
And then as far as do dietitians still use the food pyramid? So My Plate kind of has taken over in terms of like kind of replacing the food pyramid, just because it's a little bit more applicable to like everyday eating, because it does show the plate. So people can use it a little bit more easily than just looking at a pyramid. But it does have, for the most part, the same components.
Yeah, and we
All
will.
right, thank you very much.
Yeah, of course. And then we will be looking at a Mediterranean diet pyramid here shortly.
Mhm.
But yeah, so just another resource for you guys.
And then regarding the part about should diets be tailored to individuals and their body habitus, so this presentation mostly focuses on healthy individuals. So we're not covering any like specific disease states. However, like there is specific nutrition therapy for different conditions, of course. So if you have specific concerns, that would be a more personal question for either a dietitian or a physician. All right. So now moving into the Mediterranean diet pyramid, this is going to be our third healthy diet pattern. And this, as you can see, is kind of displayed in the pyramid fashion. So at the base, we have, you know, the everyday activities. And at the very bottom here, it really doesn't say anything about food. It's more about, you know, being physically active, enjoying meals with others, social interaction, and things like that. So that's not as much nutrition related, but of course, very important for foundation of wellness. And then in the everyday category, we have vegetables, fruits, whole grain breads, olive oil, beans, nuts, legumes, and seeds, herbs, and spices. So those are kind of all the components, or some of the components that we talked about in the previous two patterns, in terms of having every day. So then moving up the pyramid, the main protein source outside of beans, nuts, and legumes in the Mediterranean diet pattern is mostly the fish and seafood, which we want to have at least twice each week. And then moving further up, weekly in moderate portions, we would have poultry, eggs, cheese, and yogurt. So a little bit more in moderation. And then up at the top, so the things that we would have the least often would be those meats and sweets. And then this pattern also emphasizes water as the main beverage of choice.
Okay, if you could go to the next slide. Perfect.
And while you're doing that, there is a question about intermittent fasting to reduce caloric intake, 8-hour feeding window. If you're going to get to that later, then you can just let me know that.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, we can go ahead and answer it now. Some questions, if we don't answer them right off the bat, we'll definitely get to them later. So just want to make sure that no one thinks we're ignoring your questions or anything. But as far as intermittent fasting goes, so there is no research evidence that supports intermittent fasting and weight loss. At the end of the day, it's not super simple. It doesn't necessarily come down to amount of calories in and amount of energy burned. But at the end of the day, just I think eating like a healthy, well-rounded diet, no matter what the hours are, your choices are going to matter more than the time that you fit them into, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with everything you said. I think the only thing I would add is that for some people, like cutting off their eating time before like the late hours of the night can be helpful, just in terms of like late night snacking, or like if you're really drawn to sweets at that time. The eating window, if you will, can kind of help to like have a barrier to that. But and everything Mackenzie said, I completely agree. There's not like specific evidence about like an eating window in terms of the time. And it really does come down to more about like your healthy choices overall.
Okay, so we'll move on now. So since we've talked a little bit about, what the meal planning definition is and what a healthy plate looks like, we did want to give just a few real life examples here. So first thing we have is a burrito bowl, and we're going to use my plate to kind of see how this can fit into that. So we do have steps here, and then these slides I think have already been sent out or will be sent out. So you can always come back to these if this is something you're interested in trying. So first, you are going to cook 1/4 of a cup of dry rice, just according to the package instructions. And so as you can see from the plate here, this will be your grain. And then you're going to want to chop tomatoes and onion. You can chop them really however you like. It's kind of just personal preference. And those are going to fit into, if you're getting technical, the tomato would fit into the fruit category. And then the onion would be in the vegetable category, as well as rinsing any canned corn and black beans in a strainer. So 1/4 of a cup of each of those. And then the reason we like to recommend this is if you don't have a low sodium option for your can, this will kind of rinse off some of that salt, which will just be better for overall health. And so that canned corn can go in vegetables, and then the black beans can really count as your vegetable or as a protein if you're not necessarily a meat eater. And then speaking of that, if you are a meat eater, you could cube it chicken breast and then cook it on the skillet just with these spices and making sure it's 165 degrees. So that would fit into your protein category as well. And then you can combine all the ingredients and then top with anything that you like. So cheese would be in this dairy category. Lettuce would give you a little bit more vegetables. Avocado would be an actually healthy fat, like we talked about in the healthy eating plate, or salsa. So you can go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, and then the second example we have, we're using the diet pyramid just to kind of give another perspective. So we have a quinoa salad. So you're going to prepare 1/4 of a cup of quinoa according to package instructions and cool it. The great thing about quinoa is that it's a complete protein and it is a whole grain. So you're getting protein and fiber along with that to help you stay fuller for longer. And then you're going to chop cucumbers, tomatoes, and red onion to get a variety of those fruits and vegetables in there. Then adding 1/4 of a cup of crumbled feta cheese will provide you some dairy. And then lastly, topping with olive oil will be some of that healthy fat in there. And then just a squeeze of lemon just for taste, and then a pinch of salt and some honey. And then one thing that I personally like to do is just adding 1/4 of a cup of chickpeas for extra protein and fiber. And then chickpeas would technically fall into that legumes category along with those nuts and seeds. Okay, you can go to the next slide.
So another thing we wanted to talk about was meal planning in terms of snacks, because we know, especially for students, but also for faculty members as well, we're always running around. So it's important to have some healthy snacks on us just for when we may get hungry. So the goal with healthy snacks is that we want to incorporate both a carbohydrate with either like a fiber or a protein. And that is because pairing the carb with a fiber or protein can help us to stay fuller longer. And it also lowers the glucose response so that we don't like peak and then crash as quickly. So some good examples of some healthy snacks would include an apple with nut butter, maybe peanut butter or almond butter or something like that. You could have some chopped vegetables with hummus or crackers. Mini caprese with tomato and mozzarella and a cracker, maybe cheese and crackers, or yogurt and granola. And then hard-boiled eggs and turkey roll-ups are really great options if you're really trying to pack in the protein there. And typically it is best to eat every 3 to 4 hours just to maintain our satiety. So these can be some easy and inexpensive options.
Okay, so we can go ahead and go to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so let's see. Let me check if there's any more questions. Okay, yeah, we can get to that one. That's a good question. We can get to that one at the end. Okay, so eating the rainbow, we like to call it. Part of following a healthy, well-rounded diet is making sure that you're eating a variety of fruits and vegetables. In order to ensure you're doing this, the easiest way to check is really just to look at the colors that are on your plate and just think about the colors that you're eating, because different colors do provide different nutrients. So for example, any foods, specifically fruits or vegetables with like a yellow, orange, or red hue are going to contain carotenoids. And carotenoids are an antioxidant that can be converted to vitamin A in the body. So their role is to reduce oxidative stress in the brain, which is pretty on topic since we all, I'm sure, have some stress in our brain during finals week. And then also contributing to a healthy skin, vision, and immune function. And then any of your greens, we like to call them basically a powerhouse because they just contain a lot of different great things. They have antioxidants, fiber, multiple vitamins and minerals, and then this really supports vision, just healthy immune function in general, since it is kind of cold and flu season coming up, and heart health. And then lastly, foods that contain a bluish, purplish hue have flavonoids. And flavonoids do have anti-inflammatory effects that can protect against disease. They also assist with cell signaling, which can have neuroprotective effects, specifically to combat neurodegenerative diseases such as Alzheimer's or dementia. And so, yeah, basically in summary, you're just going to want to eat the rainbow by choosing a variety of different fruits and vegetables in different colors.
And then I think we can move to the next slide.
Next slide, please.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Okay, so mindful eating. Now that we have kind of talked about what your plate will consist of, we do want to talk about, the way that you're eating. And so this is called the hunger and satiety scale. So we're all kind of born with the innate ability to tell when we're hungry and full. But as we get older, I think, and just go throughout life, that kind of diminishes due to stress, even eating with others. Sometimes we don't necessarily pay attention to our own hunger and fullness cues. And so a really great way to do this is to kind of just use this scale. And so how it works is that every number corresponds to a different level of hunger or fullness. So as you'll see here, 1, which is on the left, is you're starving and you're feeling weak and dizzy. So at this point, your blood sugar is probably pretty low and you've waited too long to eat. As you can see on the opposite end, a 10 is when you're so full you feel absolutely sick. Some of us may have felt that way over Thanksgiving. I hope not, but those are kind of the two contrasting areas. So ideally you want to stay in the green, so between a 3 and a 6. Ideally you want to start eating between a 3 and a 4, so when you're pretty hungry or and your stomach's beginning to growl or you're just beginning to feel hungry, and then you want to stop at either a 5 or a 6, so you're just completely satisfied, neutral, or you're slightly full, or we might even say pleasantly full. And so the really great thing about this is you can kind of customize it to when the next time you're going to eat is, so you can kind of think ahead a little bit. So if you know you might not be eating until, like, say later hours of the night, say you're having a late dinner, you might want to stop eating at a 6 instead of a 5. Okay, you can go to the next slide. And then,
We can skip this one.
yeah, we can skip that.
Perfect.
Okay, and then I think before Judy, before you talk about some of the food options here, do you want us to address some of the questions in the chat?
Yeah, go ahead and talk about the person that asked about incorporating more fish.
Okay. Yeah, so let's see, like to incorporate more fish, but it seems to be challenging to not find farmed fish. Oh, okay. Yeah, so that is kind of the downside to living in the Midwest, aside from the fact that it's like 2 degrees outside right now. And I think the hard thing is you're just not going to find as good of seafood as you would, say, if you went to one of the coasts. This is one of those situations where frozen is not necessarily bad. And then Samara, if you have any thoughts on this as well, but even just like doing a frozen shrimp and then, like I said, rinsing it off with water before you use it can be a great option.
I was gonna say too, along the lines of the frozen thing, like you can also go for canned fish. So like canned tuna is a great option, especially like that could even be a snack. But also as a meal that can be helpful too. So especially in the winter, because usually in the summer it's a little bit easier to come across that high quality fresh fish. But sometimes in the winter it's a little bit easier to go with either like the canned or the frozen. But also, I'm not sure if whoever asked this question also is a meat eater, but you can also go for some of the other like healthy protein options as well, like poultry or even beans and legumes if you're not a meat eater as well.
All right, thank you for addressing that and for such a great presentation. We'll definitely monitor the chat and have you guys come back at the end in case there's any other questions that come up around nutrition. And what I'm going to do is just continue on a little bit. Oh, that's a good question about prolonging freshness. We'll catch that at the end. So you can also do mindful eating if you plan ahead with your food options here at Rush. So it's not just bringing your lunch, but there are some really good options beyond Starbucks, although I know you have to have your coffee. But let's talk about some of the other things that are here. If you've seen the cafeteria and it says Fuda, all that is the name of the company that brings in local vendors. So these are actually restaurants in the area that will contract with Rush to provide food at the cafeteria. They're new this year is the roving food carts on the clinical unit. So some of you that are also staffing at the hospital know that there's some roving food carts that you can take advantage of, which is really nice because it is healthy food at a decent price. The vending machines in the college are color-coded, if you haven't noticed that, and it does give you a cue of this is more healthy than this other row, and this top row you probably should avoid it if you can at all costs. So I think that's a great idea, and that actually was a Rush student who did that research, and that was one of the test vending machines. The farmer's fridge machines, you see the vending machines around for that. It's a little more pricey, but it does have things like hard-boiled eggs and salads, and actually the jar of salad that's in there, when you put it on a plate, it is quite a healthy amount of food that you get from that. And then again, new this past year is the old Stroger Cook County Hospital has now on that first floor a West Side food hall, which is quite a nice cafeteria with a lot of choices there as well. So there are things that you can do instead of eating the cheese crackers out of the vending machine. There are other options for you. So I'm hoping that you'll be able to take advantage of that. Next slide, please. For those of you who are into volunteering or would even just like to have a garden, but you live in an apartment, there are a lot of resources in Chicago that are able to help you with that. And so definitely the Park District, if you go on their website, you'll see maps and listings of gardens. There's also the Chicago Community Gardeners Association, where you can access a plot for gardening. The other options are the Velma Johnson Memorial Garden, which is on Flournoy, not far from us, the Garfield Park Neighborhood Market and Garden Network, the El Paso Community Garden, the Bronzeville Community Garden. Information for that, their website is info@neighbor-space.org. There's the Ginkgo Organic Garden. That's a community pantry, and food is donated to food pantries in the area. And then the 62nd and Dorchester Community Garden in Chicago, which is part of the Neighborhood Space and Chicago Land Trust. So just so you know that there are places out there that whether you want to do volunteering or set up your own garden, there's different opportunities. And on the next slide, please, what if it was you or someone you know that is struggling right now? You know, the cost of living in Chicago, the cost of where you are living to try to get food on your table, to try to pay your bills, electric bill, phone bill, whatever, and then food. There could be a time where this might be you or someone you know. And so you do want to take advantage of the Greater Food Depository. You do want to make sure that you're eating healthy because that is so important for your brain and to continue what you're doing. And how food depositories work is that they get large overstocked food. So like Tyson sends chickens to them. And there are 10 depositories in Illinois, and they dispense food to agencies, which are the food pantries. The pantries actually buy the food, but it's at a very reduced price. So when you donate money to a pantry, they actually do use that to purchase food. The agency then agrees to follow federal guidelines and use the food depository. There's about 580 pantries just here in Chicago alone. And during COVID, they actually suspended the cost. And so the pantries are receiving food for free right now. Otherwise, they would depend on donations from a community or a parish. The Chicago Hunger Walk, which is a really big thing, and maybe some of you have been in that, they also provide credit for the food pantries based on participation in the walk. So the number of people that walk the Hunger Walk, the more credit the Chicago food pantries get for purchasing food. There's several other area food pantries, and one of the ones that's kind of near and dear is Our Lady of the Holy Family right on Flournoy. One of our nurses who's retired, Daniel Kopenke, and his wife, who is still a nurse here in our, I believe, JRB area, run that food pantry. So that's definitely a place. But there's several others, including the Marillac House, the Breakthrough Fresh Market, and the Manna Food Pantry. So lots to be available to you and be able to look into food if it is you or somebody that you know. Next slide, please. So there are resources here at Rush. You can check in with a dietitian and programs. You also can check in with the Center for Clinical Wellness, and we'll talk about them in just a few moments. But so, you know, maybe some of the struggle for you is more about the anxiety or more about not having time to eat. And so you might just want to work on scheduling, and that would be definitely something that the Center for Clinical Wellness can help. Next slide, please. So if the thought of what to make for dinner is creating the anxiety, here are some additional resources that could maybe help calm your nerves, improve your focus and your organizational skills, and not grab for the first thing if you're feeling that hangry feeling. You know, if you're going to that, you know, beginning to feel hungry, pretty hungry, very hungry kind of thing. And so go to the next slide. This is actually the Center for Clinical Wellness, and donors were able to provide the funding for this space. This is what you're seeing is the conference room, but it does have counseling rooms and an energy pod that is part of the Wellness Center. It's on the first floor in the Triangle building, and it is available by appointment. And so if you go to the next slide, you can talk about the fact that they are, there's counseling, coaching, and that's a picture of the energy pod. So you can make an appointment and come in for 20 minutes and be in the energy pod just to kind of go weightless for a little while and just really kind of reset yourself. I'm going to say this probably a couple times because I really want to make sure that you guys want to take advantage of this. There is no session cap, and it is free to students, house staff, and employees. So you're able to come to this as part of your benefits, and you can come as many times as you need to. And that's a really important thing because different topics pop up throughout the year, and it's definitely something for you to take advantage of. Next slide, please. The Wellness Center is available 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, both virtually and in person. So if you're working long hours and you're going to school and you just can't even make that 7-minute walk across for an appointment, you can do it virtually. And that will include the counseling and the coaching. The Energy Pod, obviously, you'd have to come here. The QR code will take you right to the appointment scheduling. And if you're on the Rush Wellness page, you're able to access that too. That's on Inside Rush. Go ahead, next slide. If you're concerned about your confidentiality, some people have more worry about privacy, who knows that they're taking care of their mental health. I really want to reassure you about the confidentiality that we have here at the Wellness Center, as well as have you think about this as coaching, just like if you really wanted to get in shape, you'd have coaching for your physical health. You know, this is coaching for your mental health. And so the way this was built is that you come in by appointment. It is, you come into a one-person waiting room, which flows only one way into a consultation room, which then flows outside to an unmarked exit. So you can be very confidential as you come in if that's what you're thinking that would make you feel good about coming and taking care of your mental health. In addition, the documentation is encrypted. It is not my chart. It is not what we use here at Rush for the patient's portals. So it is very different. So then again, another layer of privacy, as well as the scheduling is online, and there is a separate private client portal. So several ways that we've really worked hard for your confidentiality so that you feel confident and comfortable coming to the center or using the virtual option. Next, thank you. So I want to also introduce one other option that you have available to you. So on the left side is the Center for Clinical Wellness, and that's what I was talking to you about, 7 to 7, Monday through Friday, in-person telehealth, online scheduling, unlimited to Rush Community, psychology, psychiatry, social work, counseling. In addition, we contract with Perspectives, which is a partner of Rush Wellness. That's an outside system available 24/7, telehealth and in person. They schedule by phone. And what they offer you is 5 sessions that are part of your benefit, and then you're referred to your long-term provider. The unique piece about this is it's also available to your immediate family and significant other. So if your siblings, your children, your parents are struggling with a mental health challenge, they are able to take advantage of this Wellness Assistance Program, or EAP as it was called before. But again, it's limited to the 5 sessions. So you can see kind of back and forth what might be better to work for your family, for yourself, and for whatever immediate challenge you have. And then maybe something else comes up and one of the other programs would work better. So you have choices here, which is really a good thing. To the next slide. So we're really very concerned about mental health and how everybody has that low level simmering of anger, or that level of intolerance, or the feeling that things are uncertain. And so when you're not feeling like you can just reach out to the Wellness Consult pager. So 852323, for those of you who are Bulls fans, you'll remember that as Michael Jordan's number. But the idea is that this pager will be responded to in 60 minutes, and you will get resources of what you can do with whatever is concerning you at the moment. And so we do want you to check in. Just if you're not feeling okay, just go ahead, check in, and maybe just talking to somebody is all you need, or maybe you do want to make an appointment, or maybe there is something that you need immediate. One of the members of the Wellness Center will be able to respond to you and help you out with that. So that's a really nice opportunity. And this just started new this year as well. Next slide. What we've talked about in these and other talks have been the pillars of well-being. And so if you look at physical activity, your nutrition, which we really focused on today, your need for sleep in order to process the information that you took in during the day, the ability to have social contact, and that is so important even during this time that we have to be careful with distancing, and stress management, especially now as you're preparing for your finals, you're doing your final papers. all of these things you kind of tap in and to see where you might need a little bit more coaching on. And that might be the reason that would bring you over to the Wellness Center and just to check in and maybe help them set your priorities or maybe support your well-being. Next slide. So as we wrap up, and I know we're right at 55, and since we started late, we're going to go ahead and go a couple minutes over to get your questions answered. But we do want you to be true to yourself and to pay attention, because it's really important that you get the sleep you need. That 7 hours is a sweet spot, and I know a lot of you might be rolling your eyes at this moment because that's hard to do. Your eyes and ears actually need 6 to 7 hours of quiet and dark in order to do good rejuvenation. And a cooler room will help you, but probably the most critical thing is about technology, that you're able to shut down blue screens, TV, iPad, phones out of the room so that your brain will not alert every time that screen brightens. And so that is so important to think about. Exercise just means move. I mean, exercise is included in vacuuming. Every 20 minutes that you're on a Zoom call, we should probably have done this 2 times already, that you stop looking at the screen and you do that 20-20-20 exercise where you do every 20 minutes, you look away about 20 feet away for about 20 seconds to allow your brain to get off that neural pathway that was focused on that Zoom call and allow yourself to just kind of reset or recharge. Even to walk around the block to refocus or do stairs, if you're finding yourself distracted and you're just not able to get back into the studying the way you were hoping to, trying to stick with it when you're distracted is not going to work. So getting up and moving is actually going to help. Today, you've heard some great things, great tips on nutrition from Samara and Mackenzie. Listen to your body. If you're getting that hunger signal, it might actually be because you missed the signal for thirst. And think about the last time you had anything to drink. If you're craving sweets, think about the lack of sleep being the real culprit around this. And if those salty snacks are tempting you, make a phone call. It might be due to the lack of social contact. It's really interesting how your brain works around this and how it tries to message you. Even there's been a lot of airplay again about that 10-second hug. That might be what you need to leave those Cheetos or Fritos alone. I do want to thank Samara and Mackenzie and Mark McInerney, who's the assistant professor for the Department of Clinical Nutrition, who assisted on this talk. And I want to wish all of you best wishes as you finish strong and take advantage of all the activities offered by Russia University this week. There's a lot of good things happening. Yesterday was breakfast. We have this today. So look at your emails to see what's listed for tomorrow. And social capital is a great way to allow your brain to rest and absorb all you're trying to store in there. So definitely get together with your colleagues and be able to enjoy and take a break from studying, because that will allow your brain to kind of reset. All right, next slide, please. So we can go to the chat. And Samara and Mackenzie, if you had any questions or any thoughts that came up that you'd like to kind of wrap up. There's a question about prolonging freshness of fresh foods. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Mackenzie and I were kind of thinking in terms of prolonging the freshness, the first thing that we would say is if you do have difficulty with prolonging the freshness of certain produce, it is okay to get like the canned or frozen ones, just how we were talking about, like looking for those lower sodium products or things like that. But in terms of prolonging the freshness of fresh foods, it kind of depends on what exactly foods you're talking about. But if you're looking for things that go in the refrigerator, that can be one of the best strategies, like the refrigerator or the freezer, and kind of reducing, like with greens, for example, like with leafy greens, just reducing the humidity can be helpful. So using like the crisper drawer, or there are certain like plastic or glass containers that can be helpful in terms of reducing that humidity.
Yeah, or things for like even bagged spinach. If you get that, putting like a paper towel in the bottom of the bag to help soak up some of that moisture is going to help keep that crisper and better for longer.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Thank you. There's also a question about a substitute if you don't like whole grains.
So in terms of not liking whole grains, I would challenge this person to think about the whole grains that they have tried, just because there really are so many different ones out there, and a lot of them like are not necessarily in the mainstream. So you may not have tried them before. So I would maybe look up a list of different whole grain products and just give them a try and see if you do like them, because they really are a lot more beneficial than the refined grains. But like barley, brown rice, quinoa, like we mentioned before, oatmeal, bulgur, different things like that, whole wheat breads, pastas, crackers. And then one other thing too is now that the food supply is kind of catching on to this whole grain thing. There's also a lot of products like pastas and breads and such that are made out of other things, like black bean pasta I've seen,
Like chickpea
lentil pasta,
yeah.
chickpea pasta. You may have seen like the brand Bonza in the store. So I would try out some of those different products and see if there's something that you may like, because there is a lot out there.
Thank you. Anu put in a question that you had addressed earlier about you should eat a little something every 4 hours, which I definitely think during the times that you're studying, that's a really good idea. Do you guys want to address that again?
Yeah, so we kind of mentioned this in terms of the hunger and satiety scale and also the healthy snacking. So the main reason for eating something every like 3 to 4 hours, we typically recommend, is just so that we don't get too high on that hunger scale, or low, sorry, that we don't get too low on the hunger scale. Because sometimes if we're not paying attention and we haven't eaten, let's say in like 6 hours or something, then that can be a situation where we become like ravenous and we go to the pantry or the fridge and just grab like, the first thing that we see, rather than being able to think mindfully about our food choices, which is really important when trying to make the healthful choice.
Yeah, also to add to that, glucose, which comes from carbs, is our body's like favorite energy source. So especially when it comes to the brain. So if you are like doing a long study session or something like that, sometimes, you know, eating like a small carbohydrate snack, like we said, paired with like a fiber or a protein source, can help just kind of keep you sharper for longer and really just keep your energy levels up for longer. But yeah, that's a great question. I hope everyone's finals are going well.
All right, there is one more question about weighing arsenic level in whole grain brown rice versus less healthy white rice. So I'm wondering if Mark or Mackenzie or Samara have a thought on that. And then what we'll do is I'm going to try to share my screen one more time to show you the Mentimeter. And if anyone wants to stay on, we'll do that relaxation exercise that takes about 5 minutes. So go ahead, you guys, about arsenic.
Mackenzie and I are.
Did you want me to go ahead and?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So with that, I mean, it's a great question, but the amount of whole grains that you would have to eat, I mean, it's just, that's too many. We recommend that half of your grains be whole grains, and the fiber and the vitamins and minerals that you're getting from the whole grain outweighs any negative effect that could happen. Again, you just have to eat so much that we don't do that. You'd be a 10
That's good.
on the scale.
Thanks a lot for jumping in there, Mark, and for your assistance in this. I am going to try to share my screen to see if you can see the Mentimeter. And if it's not showing up, then I'm not going to. No. All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it now. Thank you.
Yeah. So what I'm hoping is after you guys have heard this great presentation, some of the things that you talk about being restrictive or confusing maybe can slide away a little bit if you use some of the scales that they use, especially the MyPlate or the Mediterranean Pyramid, and just thinking about making it a little clearer. I know when I was working full time, 2 kids, going to school, you know, just putting food on the table was hard. And so what I ended up doing was doing my own template of Monday was a beef dish, Tuesday was a chicken dish, Wednesday was pasta, Thursday we cleared the refrigerator, Friday was pizza. And for me, that was like, that kind of gave me a template to go through. But I think some of the things that you guys have shared today about some of the visual things really do help to think about what you might have, how easy and quick it might be, and what you can prep, even like as you're cleaning up or you're preparing dinner tonight. Some of that leftover could then become your lunch for tomorrow. And so being able to plan ahead, be mindful about it, you'll really feel proud that you're able to do it. And the better you feel about doing it, the more you're going to want to do it. So I really am excited about this presentation. Thank you so much, you guys, for doing this and studying for your own finals and doing your own stuff. And then what I'm going to do is stop sharing. And then for those of you who want to stay on, I will do the 5-minute relaxation exercise. For the rest of you, have a great week and a great rest of your day. Good luck with everything. All right. For those of you who want to stay on,